Alrighty, so today we're talking about Amazon S3. S3 stands for Simple Storage Service. It's one of the first services that AWS came out with. S3 is an object level storage, which means that it works under the hood differently than something like EBS, which provides you, a block storage device that you can mount a file system to. With EBS, you create a volume. Let's say you create a 100 gig volume, and you mount it to your operating system, and it looks like a regular drive. And then, so the key differences here is that you will mount the drive, and then you'll be able to access it as a regular file system on the server. And then you will start paying for the entire storage amount that you provision, right? So if you create a 100 gig volume, you're just going to start paying for 100 gigs right away, even though if you only put maybe 10 gigs of data in there. With S3 works a little bit different. So you create something what's called a bucket in S3, which is a logical grouping of records, and then you put content in there. Now, you don't have to allocate a specific size for the bucket, and instead you're just charged for the content that gets that you upload in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a bucket in here. I'm gonna call it engineering for success. I'm gonna pick a region here. I'm gonna leave it as US West, but I want you to know that the bucket names for S3 have to be globally unique, meaning that no other account across the entire AWS can have a bucket with the same name. So I'm going to go through some of these options and just select the defaults. I'm going to block all public access for now, but later we're going to open this up and make it world readable. Click next, create bucket. Alright, and we have our bucket created here. And so I can start uploading files in here right away. I can also create some folders. So for example, images. Click save. I can create multiple directories in here. However, one thing to keep in mind is that this is all just part of the user interface and some of the abstraction that S3 provides you. Under the hood, they're all stored, just a flat hierarchy, and objects are retrieved by their keys. So if you cannot, alright, so now let's go ahead and upload a document. So I have this picture right here of Chuck Norris. I'm going to go ahead and select it and upload it to S3. I'm going to leave all the permissions default, which means it'll inherit from the bucket. Now this is an interesting option. So what S3 has is multiple storage tiers. So by default, your data will go onto the standard tier, which means that under the hood, AWS will replicate your data across 3 or more availability zones. So essentially your data will get copied and you will have multi-data center redundancy within that region. In effect, this gives you your data durability of about 11 nines, since 3 facilities would need to be lost entirely for you to actually lose your data. Now, if you don't need that kind of level of redundancy and you want to get a discount, you can pick one of the lower storage tiers. So for example, standard IA is for an infrequent access, which will give you a discount on storage cost, but there are some strings attached to it. Another storage tier is one zone IA. One zone means that your content will go in one availability zone. So this is a good alternative if you have some content that you can maybe like recreate, maybe some reports that you can regenerate if you need to. So you'll get a pretty steep discount for that. So I'm gonna leave it as standard and click next and upload this file. Alright, so when I click on it, it gives me some properties of this object. So notice the key here. This is what I would normally use to retrieve the object. So if I was interacting with this using like the API or the command line interface, I would provide, this is the key that I would provide to retrieve this file. And this is the full object URL here. And so I can open this in a new tab, and you'll notice that I'm going to get an access denied message. So because by default, I don't have permissions to access this object. However, since I'm using the management console and I'm already authenticated, what I can do is I can use this open button to open up this image. And you will see that I still have the same path as before, but here I have a bunch of stuff in here. This is called assigned URL from S3. I'm not going to talk about it right now, but you can look it up a little bit more later. Basically, it's a way to give somebody temporary access to something in AWS. So by default, this bucket is restricted so that only people that I give access to can actually look at stuff in here. And there's a button here called Made Public that's grayed out, something I cannot click on. So let's go ahead and make this bucket public. To do that, I'll have to go to permissions, and I have to essentially edit these public access policies. So when I save this and confirm, this allows me to allow things inside the bucket to be public, right? So by default, if I still go to this Chuck Norris URL, I'm still getting an access denied message. And so, now I can go in here in images, select my Chuck Norris, and make it public. Now that it's public, I can go ahead and reload, and I see my Chuck Norris. And anybody else in the world that I can give this URL to, they can see this without authenticating. Let's see. All right, so there's a couple other cool things about S3. So first of all, you can enable versioning for your content. This means that if you delete or overwrite content, it'll actually maintain the new revision as a separate version, and you can still pull back the old content if you wanted to. You can turn on advanced logging. You can encrypt all the content in your S3 bucket. It's very easy using keys from KMS. Amazon does all the heavy lifting in terms of encryption. And then another cool option is the static website hosting. So if you have, for example, some static assets for your website, think of like CSS and JS, or images, or if you have a single page application, you can host that application directly in S3. So typically, at the very least, you would need a web server for your application. Even if it's a static site, that doesn't change much. So now with S3, you can actually have a static hosted website and just point your DNS to it. So I hope you enjoyed this quick overview of S3. There are a whole bunch of other features that S3 has for you that I'm not going to go over in this video, but if you want me to go into detail, if you have any more questions, just hit me up in the comments. Thank you.